burned off.
Yes, there were cases like that. I knew of a doctor, surgeon, who I heard about later. He was doing an operation, urgent operation, and he had his back towards the center of the place where the bomb dropped, and he had that big officer's uniform, you know, that big uniform, and the whole of his back, from the head down, was burned, and he died in 3 days.
That was right through the uniform?
Yes, the whole uniform, but nothing burned.
And were there cases in which clothing actually was burned off from people that were not within buildings that caught on fire and things like that? People who were out in the open, did their clothing burn off from them?
Yes, there were cases like that. And I think wool burned. I happened to think it over last night, and I think woolly and heavy things burn faster than just cotton. See, I didn't take notice about clothing then. It was just...
when things burned, were there flames in connection with the burning, or did it disintegrate without the flames being evident? When you speak of clothes being burned.
Well, I never saw a person with the clothes being burned. You see, we went right out of the city, so we didn't see it all. And I suppose it was so fast nobody noticed it. Now, I don't think it burned with flames. I think it just... Well, the body didn't burn with flames at all, but the building, the whole city was...
Was there any place that you know of where things burned where there was no fire at the time the bomb hit? In other words, the fire was created by the bomb itself and not coming in contact with fire.
I think the whole of Hiroshima was like that. I mean, the bomb fell, and in some cases we started from maybe housewife was not very cautious about putting out the light, you know, putting out the fire.
An isolated haystack,
yes,
where there was no fire present at the time the bomb hit. Did things like that burst into flames?
Well, I should think so, because maybe so, but I've never noticed any of that. But I maybe think so, because I would be walking out in the mountains, you know, through mountains, and all of a sudden on our right or on our left, bushes start to burn right out. So we had to dodge those the fires. And the fire lasted in Hiroshima, let's see, from about 8:30 to, I think, the next morning, about early in the morning, about 6 o'clock it ended. And people, you know, they tried to save themselves who were already encircled by the fire. They jumped into the rivers. You know, there were 7 rivers in Hiroshima. They were just full of them. And I knew of a Russian lady and a Russian gentleman. He stayed in the water for 7 hours. He'd come out of the water for a little while to get a breath, and then he'd go out again. He was in water just up to there all the time, 7 hours. And it was so hot that he said he was afraid the water was going to boil. On both sides, the fire would just get fiercer and fiercer. And the doctors were so panicked that they forgot the patients that were lying around.
If I understood correctly, you said that your parents were having breakfast by a window?
Yes, sir.
And was this window on the side towards the bomb?
No, sir.
It was on the back side?
Yes, and it was shut.
So
yes.
they weren't then exposed through the window to the rays?
But then the sun's rays were coming into the room where my father and mother were.
But the direct rays from the bomb blast then did not come through the window?
Yes, because the window was on the other side.
Yeah.
Did you say you were looking directly towards the city when it happened?
Yes, sir.
Did the light bother your eyes?
Yes, I saw the light very close to me. I thought it was on me, and I felt the hot wave, too. I thought it was very hot.
Was there any chance that your brother, who you said was outside...
Speak up louder, please.
Was there any chance that your brother, who you said was outside, could have been protected by a building or something from the rays coming down, account for him not being burned?
Well, he was in the sunshine, absolute sunshine.
The sunshine is coming from the east, and I gathered the bomb was from the west, from what you said about the window.
Yes.
I just wonder if there's a possibility of a protecting building or something that kept the rays of the bomb from hitting it direct.
Well, the children that were playing with my brother were burned. They didn't lie down on the ground. They were little children. They got burned and they died soon after. My brother didn't get burned.
So far as you know, anyone who was in a wooden house behind a wooden wall burned, except those burns outside, those who were burned by fire on the building was fire.
Well, I didn't see myself, but I heard from people that the wooden buildings, just as soon as, which were on the side of the bomb, and there were on the sunny side, just burned immediately with the flash.
How about those who were behind brick or stone walls and stone brick buildings? Were they burned?
Oh, the brick buildings were destroyed, and they fell on top of the people and injured them. Many, many people were killed. But big buildings like this, from 7th and 8th stories high, falling down and becoming 1 story high, you see. And then they'd never come out. There are thousands of people, even still, not dug out. Don't know a thing about them.
You mentioned having been in the direct rays of this. Did you feel anything at all when the light struck you?
Yes, I thought it was very hot.
Yes.
Yes, I just felt uncomfortable.
Did you, very shortly after you felt the flash, did you feel any wind blowing or any pressure or anything of that type?
Well, it was all in one bang. I tell you, I never heard explosion. I suppose there was an explosion, big sound, but I never heard it. I just saw the house tumbling down, and I believe it was all dark. That's all I remember. Everything in darkness for about 2 or 3 minutes.
Do you think the darkness might have been from the result of the flash having affected your eyes? Or do you think it was due to something else?
I think it was just dust. Because my eyes, I couldn't clear out my eyes for about 2 or 3 days. It was just full of little bits of sand and glass, I suppose, and everything. It was very painful.
You mentioned about the door having been scorched. Was any of your clothing or anything scorched at all?
No, nothing.
Were you wearing light-colored or dark-colored clothing?
I was wearing a blue dress. It was a very light blue dress. Light colored. Cotton dress.
Any questions?
Thank you, Betty. That's back. You were back, you were back afterwards, from the standpoint of services there. For instance, was the water supply working when you went back? Was that the problem?
No.
All services were.
Absolutely, yes. Well, for a police station, you know, it was kind of in the suburbs. Only about 2 policemen left of the whole staff. You see, so there's nothing, absolutely. Went back to ruins. Absolute ruins.
Was there you said it was dark for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Did the dust rise so as to cover the sunlight to make it appear as if there was
Yes, I don't know what it was. It was just absolute darkness for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then later it started to clear up better and better, you know. I don't know, it just sort of rise, and then it clear up a bit. The airplanes flying above, you know.
Did it reduce the visibility so that you couldn't see 2 or 3 miles, or could you see a long distance a short time after the bomb hit?
Well, maybe in half an hour I could see downtown.
In other words, when you saw
Very clearly. I mean, as clear as I could really
when
see
you
it.
saw the castle burning,
Yes.
how many minutes after the bomb hit was
Well,
that?
maybe it was 5. So I could you could see the flames.
Did you see any other white people after the bombing? Were there any other around you, and were they not burned?
Not one white person was burned. They were injured, but not burned.
And you saw quite a few of them, maybe
Yes,
how
we
many?
saw them 3 days after.
Yes.
We saw everybody.
And
Were any of these white people nearer the center of town than yourself at the time?
Yes, we were the only ones out of town. Everybody else was in the town. We advised them, we told them we'd take them with us and everything, but they said, no, we don't need. Well, the missionaries, they thought that it was their duty to die with the Japanese, the German Catholics. But then the other people, we told them to, but then all their garments and everything burned, you see.
Were there any of these white people that lost their hair at a later date?
No, nobody's injured in any way. That's why the Japanese, they just say it's a miracle, and it must be some kind of a trick to it, you know. They just won't believe us.
How many white people?
There were 9 Russians, 1 American woman. Oh, she's American, I don't know, maybe she's French or something, but she says she's American, married to a Japanese. And I believe 12 Germans, German missionaries.
they were located in various parts of the town, some nearer and some in approximately the same distance as you people at the time of the explosion.
Yes, about half-half.
Was there any visible change in the attitude of the people toward the war after the bomb fell?
Oh, they said that it was very unhuman, and that I suppose that we'd lost the war, and they said, I suppose all the Japanese are going to be killed, but we're going to live in the dugouts, and we're not going to just give up by this. Well, there are all various opinions. There were people who, right from the beginning, said we shouldn't have fought with the Americans. We shouldn't have fought with foreign people anyway, because they consider anybody white their God. They think a white person is a very highly educated and something very much higher than themselves. But some people, you see, they won't agree to that, and they try to live up to us, and if they can't.
On whom they place the responsibility for the effects of these bombs?
I heard a rumor that said that America defeated Germany, and that they took the bomb away from the Germans. See, the Germans had it ready to bomb New York, and so they took it away from the Germans and used it on us. And they said the pilot was a German forced by Americans. And they saw him tied up in Hiroshima to a telephone pole, and the Japanese beat him to death, they said. I never saw the German, or that was a rumor that I heard.
Did you hear any criticism of the government leaders or the military officials for the bombing?
You mean the criticism of the Japanese?
Yes.
Oh, yes, very many criticisms. You see, the sirens, the radio locators, they said that they didn't work very well because the airplane would fly over, and then the sirens would go. And on that day, the bomb was dropped, and there were no sirens whatsoever. There was always a B-29 or two flying about, no sirens. They blamed the people that took care of telling us when the enemy plane would be over. And they blamed the government for not paying much attention to that. Oh, there were a lot of criticisms. The whole of Japan, I mean, all during the war there were criticisms, especially the military folks.
Did the government take any steps immediately following the catastrophe for rehabilitation? Did they send anybody in there, or were there any outside agencies that came in there immediately?
Oh, yes, from other towns, there were policemen, nurses, doctors, and engineers. Everybody sent. That was very nice. And the only thing they took care of was food. Nothing else. No bandages, no clothing, absolutely nothing. If we hadn't stopped and this Japanese little household wouldn't have let us in their little cottage, we'd had to sleep on the floor just like this, a wooden floor with not even a mat.
Was the Red Cross able to come down there?
No Red Cross.
No.
Oh, everything was smashed.
How did they bury the people?
Oh, they didn't even burn them. There were just thousands and thousands of soldiers and people that they just dug a big hole in front of the regiment headquarters. There's a big field where the soldiers march and have parades, you know. They dug a big hole there, and they threw the bodies in there, and they covered them. They did it about 5 times.
How did the people in the surrounding areas to which these people were evacuated behave toward them?
Oh, the countryside didn't want, we were supposed to evacuate. We had a command from the government saying that we had to evacuate by the 25th of February. And people started to evacuate, but the country people, they started saying that you didn't pay much attention to us during when it was good times. Now that you're asking for help, well, we won't let you in, you see. And they made all sorts of excuses saying that there's a sick person, or the house is too small, or we won't sell you the vegetables, you know, because it's so scarce. And, well, they tried to live the people out. So even if they went to their relatives, you see, to live, well, they'd come back with nervous breakdown, saying, I'd rather live under, be killed by a bomb than to live in a house where they don't want you. So very many people came back.
How about the evacuation after the atomic bomb fell?
Oh, then. Oh, then they sympathized. At least they sympathized with us, even though we were foreigners. Oh, they acted very nice to us.
How do they behave toward each other? How do they behave toward other Japanese who were evacuated?
Well, there was I don't think they were so astonished. They were so astonished that, they didn't have time to think about how to act or anything. Everybody was out of their wits. Everybody had a wounded girl or a boy or a husband killed or something. And they went out downtown to hunt for their husbands or wives or children. They had to hunt for 3 or 4 days before they found even traces of the bones. See, they had no time to eat or talk or anything. They were just so tired out and hunting. They'd go out hunting for weeks and they wouldn't find anybody, so they just give up. And when they talk about it, they say, "Shikataganai," and they laugh away.
Were the Japanese scientists slow in coming into the bomb place after the bomb struck, or was it several days before they came in?
Oh, after the war ended and everything, maybe a month later they came.
Well, after the bomb hit the place, how many days before the Japanese scientists came in to investigate, or were they slow to come in because of this so-called radioactivity?
I don't think any scientists came before the war ended. They didn't dare, because every time you'd go out, you were so afraid of that it was going to be dropped again. I personally wouldn't go out for South States too. Couldn't. It was awful. Those airplanes were maneuvering over us day and night.
What was the effect upon people in Hiroshima of the second bomb in Nagasaki?
Well, we heard the report over the radio, and it said that it wasn't so successful because the weather was not so as good as in Hiroshima. See, they said the atomic bomb only acted from 8 to about 12 in the morning, because that was the best time when the bomb would explode. I don't know the reason. Maybe the sun's rays are the strongest then. So the people were warned not to go outside during the morning hours. And they said that in Nagasaki there were not so many people killed, and that it did not affect the city as much as Hiroshima.
There are several concrete and structural steel buildings in Hiroshima near the site where the bomb went off.
Yes.
Do you know whether anybody lived that was in those buildings or was in the cellars of any buildings that were, say, within a half a kilometer of where the bomb exploded?
Yes. Oh, you mean, had I seen anybody?
Have you seen anybody that was there at the time and that has subsequently lived beyond the week or 2 week period that most of them died in?
No, not one person. As I said before, I didn't meet one person from that area. I met a person who was working in that area, but that morning he happened to go out or something, and he's the only one left in that office. He happens to be my insurance man. Luckily he was there.
Can you tell us
He's
a little?
the only man. Excuse me.
Can you tell us a little more about the attitude of the people who got burned against those who didn't get burned?
Well, that was just, I think it was pure jealousy. Especially the young girls and young men, they looked at each other, and even friends, they'd say, "Why in the world weren't you burned? Why did I have to be burned?" And they'd be peeved, terribly peeved. And especially they became peeved after the war ended. They said, all this suffering for nothing, you see. They believed that if they fought to the end, Japan would flourish, and we were all dumbed by the idea that America was losing. You see, so, and the people, they thought they were getting at something. So they suffered, the Japanese, they'd bear anything for the country. So even they were burned, they say, "Shikataganai." I knew a person who had 7 children, all of them died because of burns. And she said, "Oh, for the country, for the country." And then the right next day, she hears the emperor saying, "Why," she said, "my goodness, I wish..."